The sound of bread hitting stone was what woke Lucas Thorne from his restless sleep, and he grabbed the iron poker beside his bed before his eyes had fully opened. In the 5 years since he had left military service and claimed this homestead on the frontier between human lands and the wilderness beyond, he had learned that any noise in the night could mean bandits, wild animals, or worse. He moved silently down the narrow stairs of his cottage, barefoot on the cold wooden planks, listening for any other sounds that might tell him what had invaded his home. The pantry door creaked, and he heard a sharp intake of breath, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone trying very hard not to make any noise at all. Lucas rounded the corner with the poker raised, ready to drive off whatever intruder had broken into his home, and froze at the sight before him. A girl stood in his pantry, barely visible in the weak moonlight filtering through the kitchen window, with one of his loaves clutched against her chest and terror written across her face. Not a human girl, he realized as his eyes adjusted. Green skin gleamed in the pale light, and 2 small tusks protruded from her lower lip. An orc. She could not have been more than 19 or 20 years old, thin to the point of gauntness, with hollow cheeks and eyes too large in her angular face. Her clothes were little more than rags, torn and stained with mud and what might have been blood. She stared at him like a cornered animal, trembling so violently that crumbs fell from the bread she held. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Lucas had fought orcs during his time in the border wars, had seen what their raiding parties could do to frontier villages, had lost friends to their axes and arrows. But he had also seen what human soldiers did to orc villages in retaliation, had watched homes burn with families still inside, had heard the screams. The girl before him was no warrior. She was starving, desperate, and utterly terrified. He lowered the poker slowly, setting it against the wall with a soft clink that made her flinch. "It is all right," he said quietly, keeping his voice as gentle as he could manage. "I am not going to hurt you." She did not respond, did not move except for that constant trembling that shook her whole body. Her eyes darted toward the door, then back to him, calculating whether she could make it past him before he could grab her. Lucas took a deliberate step backward, giving her a clear path to escape if she wanted it. The movement seemed to confuse her more than reassure her. "You are hungry," he said, stating the obvious because he did not know what else to say. "That bread is old. I baked it 3 days ago." He moved slowly toward the pantry, watching her tense as he approached, and reached past her to grab the fresh loaf he had made that morning. It was still soft when he pressed his thumb against the crust, still fragrant with wheat and herbs. He held it out to her, the whole loaf, and watched her stare at it as though it might be a trap. "Take it," he said. "Please. You need it more than I do." Her hands moved without conscious thought, setting down the stale loaf and accepting the fresh one with a reverence that made his chest ache. She held it carefully, as though it were made of glass, and for a moment he thought she might cry. Then she bolted, clutching the bread to her chest as she ran for the door. He heard it slam open, heard her footsteps pounding across the dirt yard, and then silence. Lucas stood in his pantry for a long time, staring at the stale loaf she had left behind, wondering what in the world he had just done. Helping an orc, even a starving girl, was the kind of thing that could get a man driven out of human settlements if word got around. The frontier communities were barely holding on as it was, with raids and skirmishes happening every few months. Kindness toward the enemy was seen as betrayal. But when he closed his eyes, all he could see was the desperate hunger in her face, the way her ribs had shone through the tears in her shirt, the absolute terror in her eyes when she thought he might hurt her. He went back to bed but did not sleep. He lay awake watching the shadows move across his ceiling, thinking about the girl and wondering if she had anywhere to go, anyone to care for her. The question bothered him more than it should have. 3 nights later, he heard the pantry door creak again. This time he did not grab the poker. He pulled on his trousers and shirt and walked downstairs quietly, stopping at the kitchen doorway where he could see into the pantry without startling her. She was there again, the same girl, looking even thinner than before if that were possible. She had managed to open his cold cellar and was staring at the cheese and smoked meat he kept there with such longing that it hurt to watch. "The cheese is better than it looks," he said softly, and she whirled around with a gasp, nearly dropping the wedge she had picked up. "The outside is a bit hard, but the inside is still good." She stood frozen, clearly weighing whether to run or fight. Lucas moved slowly into the kitchen, keeping his distance, and lit a candle so they could see each other properly. In the warm light, she looked even worse than he remembered. Her green skin had an unhealthy pallor, and there were dark circles under her eyes. A fresh cut ran along her jaw, crusted with dried blood. "What happened to your face?" he asked before he could stop himself. She touched the cut reflexively, then dropped her hand. "Fell," she said, her voice rough and low as though she did not use it often. Her accent was thick, turning the simple word into something almost melodic. "That is a clean cut. You did not fall." He took a step closer and she took a step back. "Someone hurt you. Not your concern, human." The words were defensive, but there was no real anger in them. She was too tired for anger. "You are in my pantry at midnight stealing cheese. I think that makes it a little bit my concern." He tried for a smile, but she just stared at him with those 2 large eyes. "My name is Lucas. What is yours?" She hesitated so long he thought she would not answer. "Grushka," she finally said. "Grushka." He tested the name, liking the way it sounded. "Are you going to run away again if I make you something to eat? You would do that." Suspicion colored every word. "Why?" "Because you are hungry and I have food, and that seems like reason enough." He moved past her carefully, reaching into the cold cellar for the cheese, some of the smoked venison, and a jar of pickled vegetables his neighbor had given him last month. "Sit down before you fall down. You look like you have not eaten in a week." 5 days, she admitted, swaying slightly where she stood. "Maybe 6. Lucas pulled out one of his kitchen chairs and pointed at it. After a long moment, Grushka lowered herself into it, perching on the edge as though ready to flee at any moment. He sliced the cheese and meat, piled it on a plate with the pickled carrots and onions, and set it in front of her along with a cup of water from the bucket by the door. She stared at the food as though it might disappear if she looked away. "Go ahead," he said gently. "It is yours." She ate like someone who had forgotten what it was like to have enough, shoving food into her mouth with both hands, barely chewing before swallowing. He watched her in silence, fighting the urge to tell her to slow down before she made herself sick. When the plate was empty, she drained the cup of water and sat back, eyes closed, breathing hard. "Thank you," she whispered. "You are welcome." He refilled her cup and set it down carefully. "Grushka, where are you staying? Do you have somewhere safe to sleep?" Her eyes opened, wary again. "Why do you want to know?" "Because it is going to rain tomorrow, and I would like to know that you are not sleeping outside in it." That was not entirely true. Rain or not, the thought of her sleeping rough somewhere bothered him more than he wanted to admit. "I have a place," she said, but the way she said it told him the place was not much of one, in the forest. "Yes, how far?" "Far enough." She stood, the chair scraping against the floor. "I should go." "Wait." He grabbed a cloth sack from his cupboard and filled it with more food. Not just the scraps, but good provisions. A half-wheel of cheese, dried meat, the rest of the pickled vegetables, another loaf of bread. He added apples from his root cellar and a small jar of honey. When he turned back, she was watching him with an expression he could not read. "You cannot keep coming here," he said as he handed her the sack. "Not because I mind, but because someone will see you eventually, and they will not be as understanding as I am. This is enough food for a week or so." After that, he trailed off, not sure what he meant to say. After that, what? She should come back. She should move on. She should starve quietly where he could not see it. Grushka took the sack, holding it carefully. "Why are you doing this?" "I do not know," he admitted. "Maybe because you remind me that not everything in this world has to be about fighting and hating. Maybe because I am tired of being alone out here. Maybe I am just a fool who cannot stand to see someone go hungry." He met her eyes, those strange amber eyes that seemed to glow in the candlelight. "Does it matter why?" "Yes," she said. "It always matters why." She left through the front door this time instead of sneaking out, and he watched her disappear into the darkness with the sack slung over her thin shoulder. He went back to bed and dreamed of amber eyes and the sound of someone eating like they had forgotten what it was to be full. A week passed, then two. He did not see her again, but he found himself checking the pantry every morning, half expecting to find evidence that she had returned. He also found himself baking more bread than he needed, making extra cheese from the milk his goats provided, smoking more meat than one man could reasonably eat, just in case. He told himself he was being practical, that having extra provisions was sensible on the frontier, but he knew he was lying to himself. The summer heat broke finally, giving way to cooler nights that smelled of approaching autumn. Lucas was in his garden harvesting the last of his tomatoes when he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. A scream, sharp and full of pain, coming from the direction of the forest. He dropped his basket and ran toward the sound without thinking, grabbing his old sword from where it hung by the door as he passed. He found her about a quarter-mile into the trees, trapped under a deadfall that had collapsed on what must have been her shelter. Branches and rotted wood pinned her legs, and she was struggling weakly to pull herself free. Her face was gray-green with pain and shock, and blood seeped from a gash on her forehead. "Grushka!" He dropped to his knees beside her, assessing the damage. The main trunk had missed her, thank the gods, but a heavy branch lay across her shins. "Stop moving, you are making it worse." "Get it off," she gasped. "Please get it off." "I will, just breathe. I need to lift it carefully or I might hurt you more." He positioned himself to get leverage under the branch, bracing his feet against a larger log. "On three. 1, 2, 3. He lifted with all his strength, muscles burning with the effort, and the branch rose slowly. "Can you pull yourself out?" She dragged herself backward, biting back cries of pain, until she was clear. He dropped the branch and went to her immediately, running his hands over her legs to check for breaks. Her left ankle was already swelling, and she whimpered when he touched it. Bruising, probably a bad sprain, but nothing felt broken. The cut on her head was bleeding freely but did not look too deep. "I am going to carry you," he told her. "This is going to hurt." "No," she protested weakly. "Too dangerous. If someone sees, I do not care." He slid his arms under her knees and shoulders, lifting her as carefully as he could. She was distressingly light, all bone and lean muscle with hardly any weight to her. She made a sound of pain but did not fight him as he carried her out of the forest and across his field to the cottage. Inside, he laid her on his bed, the only real bed in the house, and went to fetch water and clean cloth. She tried to sit up, looking around his room with wide eyes. "I cannot be here. You will get in trouble." "Then I will get in trouble." He gently pushed her back down and began cleaning the blood from her face. The cut was not as bad as he had feared, though it would leave a scar. Her ankle worried him more. It was swelling rapidly, turning dark purple in shades that looked almost black against her green skin. He wrapped it carefully, remembering field medicine from his army days, and elevated it on a folded blanket. "There was a storm 2 nights ago," she said softly as he worked. "It brought down old trees. I thought my shelter was safe, but the roots must have been rotted through." "You have been living in the forest this whole time." He tried to keep the anger out of his voice and failed. "In a shelter made of dead fall. I had nowhere else to go. You could have come here." "Could I?" She looked at him with those amber eyes, and he saw the truth there. No, she could not have. He was human, she was orc. The frontier was a place of survival, and survival meant sticking with your own kind. Trust between their peoples had been broken too many times, paid for in too much blood. One man giving her bread did not change centuries of hatred. "You can stay here while you heal," he said firmly. "I will not hear arguments about it. Your ankle needs rest and you cannot walk on it. A few days at least. People will talk." "There are no people. The nearest neighbor is 3 miles away and he minds his own business." That was not entirely true. Old Henrik minded everyone's business, but he rarely came by unannounced. "Just a few days, Grushka, please." She closed her eyes, exhausted and in pain, and he took that as agreement. He gave her water mixed with willow bark tea for the pain, and covered her with his best blanket. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing slow and steady. Lucas sat in his chair by the window and watched her rest, wondering what he had gotten himself into, and finding that he did not particularly care. The next few days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Lucas moved his things to the main room and slept on a bedroll by the fire, giving Grushka his bed and the privacy of his room. During the day, he worked his land as usual, tending his garden and his small flock of goats, but every few hours he would check on her, bringing her food and water and fresh bandages for her ankle. She accepted his care with a wary gratitude that gradually softened into something more comfortable. On the 3rd day, he came in from the fields to find her sitting up in bed, looking through the book he had left on his bedside table. She set it down guiltily when he entered. "I am sorry. I should not have touched your things." "It is fine. Can you read?" He was surprised. Literacy was uncommon on the frontier among both humans and orcs, some. "My mother taught me before she died." She touched the book carefully. "This is about plants, herbs and their uses." "Yes, I have been teaching myself. There is no healer within a day's travel, so I figured I should know how to treat common ailments." He sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "Your mother taught you to read. What else did she teach you?" Grushka was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the book. "She taught me that strength is not just in muscle and blade, that knowing things, understanding the world is its own kind of power." Her voice grew softer. "My clan did not agree. They said learning human skills made me weak, made me a traitor to orc ways." "Is that why you were alone?" "Part of it." She met his eyes and he saw old pain there. "When I spoke against raiding human settlements, when I said perhaps there could be peace, they cast me out. My mother had already died. I had no one to speak for me, so I left." "How long ago?" 3 months, maybe 4. "Time blurs when you are alone." She gestured to her ankle. "I have been surviving, mostly by stealing from human farms and hunting small game. I am not very good at either." Lucas felt something twist in his chest. 3 or 4 months alone, barely surviving, cast out for wanting peace. "You do not have to steal anymore," he said quietly. "Not from me, at least. You cannot keep feeding me, Lucas. You barely have enough for yourself. I have plenty. The garden has been good this year and the goats give more milk than I can use." He stood, suddenly restless. "I am going to make stew for supper. Are you well enough to come out to the main room, or should I bring it to you? I can come out." She swung her legs over the side of the bed, testing her injured ankle with a wince. "If you will help me." He offered his arm, and she took it, leaning on him heavily as they made their way to the main room. He settled her in the chair by the fireplace and built up the fire against the evening chill that was creeping in. As he prepared their meal, cutting vegetables and venison into the pot, he was aware of her watching him with an intensity that made him self-conscious. "What?" he asked finally, glancing over his shoulder. "You move like a soldier," she said, "but you live like a farmer. Which are you?" "Both." "Neither." He stirred the pot, considering his answer. "I was a soldier for 6 years, fought in the border wars. When my service was up, I took my pay and came out here to build something instead of destroying things. I wanted to be done with fighting. Do you ever regret it?" "Sometimes. When the loneliness gets bad, or when the wolves come after my goats, or when a thunderstorm takes out half my garden." He smiled slightly. "But mostly no. I like the quiet. I like building things with my own hands. I like knowing that I am creating life instead of taking it." "You killed orcs in the war." It was not a question. "Yes." He did not look at her. "I did what I was ordered to do. I am not proud of it. My brother died in those wars, my mother's brother too, half my clan." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of all that blood. Lucas set down his spoon and turned to face her. "I cannot undo what I did. I cannot bring them back. All I can do is try to be better now than I was then." "Is that why you helped me?" "Guilt, maybe at first," he admitted, "but not anymore. Now I help you because I want to. Because you deserve help. Because I think maybe you are trying to be better too, trying to build something new instead of just repeating old hatreds." He met her eyes. "Does that make sense?" "Yes," she said softly. "It does." They ate together in comfortable silence, and afterward he helped her back to bed. As he turned to leave, she caught his hand. Her palm was rough with calluses, her grip strong despite her injuries. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I know the risk you are taking." "You are worth the risk," he replied, and realized he meant it completely. Over the next week, Grushka's ankle healed enough for her to walk around the cottage with only a slight limp. She insisted on helping with chores despite his protests, washing dishes and mending his clothes with neat, careful stitches. She had a quick mind and skilled hands, and she learned fast. When he showed her how to milk the goats, she mastered it within a day. When he taught her to make bread, she remembered every step, and soon was producing loaves as good as his. They fell into an easy companionship that surprised them both. In the mornings, they worked together in the garden, harvesting the last of the summer vegetables before the frost came. In the afternoons, Lucas taught her more about herbs and healing while she told him stories of orc culture, teaching him words in her language and explaining customs he had never understood. In the evenings, they cooked together and talked by the fire until the candles burned low. He learned that she was 20 years old, that her favorite color was the deep blue of twilight, that she sang softly to herself when she thought he could not hear. He learned that she was clever and funny, that she had a gift for mimicking bird calls, that she loved learning new things with an almost desperate hunger. He learned that she flinched at sudden movements and loud noises, that she had nightmares sometimes and woke gasping, that she still could not quite believe she was safe. She learned that he was 32, that he had grown up in a small village 100 miles to the east, that he had lost both his parents to illness before joining the army. She learned that he carved small wooden figures in his spare time, that he talked to his goats like they were people, that he had a deep, rumbling laugh that came rarely but transformed his whole face when it did. She learned that he was patient and kind, that he never raised his voice or his hand, that he treated her like she mattered. The first frost came in mid-September, painting the grass silver in the mornings and stripping the leaves from the trees. Lucas woke to find Grushka already up, standing in the doorway looking out at the changed landscape with a troubled expression. "Winter is coming," she said without turning around. "I should leave soon." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Why?" "Because I cannot stay here forever." "Because you have been more than generous, but I have imposed on you long enough." "Because—" She stopped, shoulders tight with tension. "Because what?" "Because I am afraid." She turned to face him, and he saw fear and longing warring in her expression. "I am afraid that if I stay much longer, I will not want to leave. I am afraid that I am becoming too comfortable, too dependent. I am afraid that I am putting you in danger just by being here." Lucas crossed the room to stand before her, close enough to touch but not touching. "What if I do not want you to leave, Lucas? What if I want you to stay?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them. "What if I have gotten used to having you here, to cooking for two instead of one, to having someone to talk to in the evenings? What if the thought of you leaving makes me feel like I am losing something I did not even know I needed?" She stared at him, her amber eyes wide. "You do not mean that." "I do." He took a breath, steadying himself. "I know it is insane. I know it goes against everything we have both been taught. But these past weeks with you here have been the best I have had since I came to this place. You make everything brighter, Grushka. Even the work feels easier when I know you are here. And yes, maybe it is dangerous and maybe people would not understand, but I do not care. I want you to stay. If you want to stay." "I do not know what I want," she whispered. "I have been surviving for so long I have forgotten what it is like to have choices. Then let me make it simple. You can stay here for as long as you like. Through the winter, through the spring, forever if you want. I am not asking for anything except your company. I am not asking you to be anything except yourself." He finally reached out, taking her hand carefully, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. "What do you say?" Grushka looked down at their joined hands, her green skin dark against his tan. "My clan would say I am betraying everything they believe in." "What do you say?" She was quiet for a long moment, and then she squeezed his hand. "I say I would like to stay." Relief flooded through him, so intense it made him dizzy. He squeezed back, smiling at her, and she smiled in return, her small tusks catching the morning light. In that moment, he realized something that should have terrified him but instead felt inevitable and right. He was falling in love with her. They did not speak of love that day or for many days after. What they had was too new, too fragile to burden with such heavy words. Instead, they showed it in small actions. Lucas carved a wooden comb and gave it to her, watching with quiet pleasure as she used it to untangle her black hair each evening. Grushka made him a new shirt from cloth she had been saving, stitching it late at night by the fire, making it large enough to fit his broad shoulders comfortably. He taught her to read better, and she taught him her language. They worked side by side preparing for winter, smoking meat and storing vegetables in the cold cellar and chopping wood for the fire. As autumn deepened into winter, they grew closer still. The cold nights made them seek warmth, and gradually they fell into the habit of sitting near each other by the fire, shoulders touching, sharing body heat. One night in early November, Grushka fell asleep leaning against his shoulder, and Lucas sat very still for an hour, not wanting to wake her, memorizing the feeling of her weight against him. The first real test came in late November, when old Henrik showed up at Lucas's door with a haunch of venison and news from the wider world. Lucas had seen him coming and managed to get Grushka hidden in his room with the door closed, but his heart pounded the entire time Henrik was there. "Thought you might appreciate some fresh meat," Henrik said, handing over the venison. He was a grizzled old man who had lived on the frontier for 40 years and had the scars to prove it. "Been a good season for hunting." "I appreciate it. Come in, warm yourself." Lucas stepped aside, hyper-aware of any evidence of Grushka's presence. He had hidden most of her things, but there were 2 cups on the table, 2 plates drying by the wash basin. Henrik noticed immediately. His sharp eyes swept the room, taking in the details. "You have company." "A friend from my army days stopped by a few weeks ago, left those behind." The lie came easily, too easily. "I keep meaning to put them away." Henrik did not look convinced, but he did not press. "Word is there has been orc activity to the north. Scouts spotted a war band moving through the forest about 30 miles from here. Might want to keep your sword close and your door barred at night." Lucas felt his blood chill. How large a war band? 10, maybe 15 warriors. Could be raiders, could be just passing through. Hard to say with orcs. Henrik settled into a chair, accepting the cup of tea Lucas offered. "There is talk in the settlements of organizing a militia, driving them out before winter sets in properly. Some of the younger men are eager for a fight." "That is a mistake." The words came out sharper than Lucas intended. "Starting a fight before winter will just mean more people dead on both sides. Orcs do not think like we do, boy. You show them weakness and they take advantage. You fought them. You know what they are like." "I know that they are people, same as us. Some are good, some are bad. Most are just trying to survive." He set down his tea carefully, fighting to keep his voice level. "Going after them now when they might just be passing through will start a war we do not need." Henrik studied him with those sharp old eyes. "You have gone soft out here. Maybe. Or maybe I have gotten smart enough to realize that killing should be a last resort, not a first response." They talked for a little while longer, but the conversation was strained. When Henrik finally left, Lucas waited until he was out of sight before opening the bedroom door. Grushka stood just inside, pale and shaking. "You heard?" he asked. "Every word. I need to leave, Lucas. If there are war parties nearby, if the humans are organizing militias, I cannot be here. I will bring you nothing but trouble." "No." He crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently. "You are not going anywhere. We will be careful. We will keep you hidden if anyone comes by, but you are not leaving. You could be killed for harboring me. And you would definitely die alone in the winter forest, so you are staying." He pulled her into a hug, feeling her tension gradually ease as she leaned into him. "I am not letting you go, Grushka, not now." She wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. "I am afraid. So am I. But we will be all right. I promise." He kept his promise as best he could through the long winter months. They were more careful now, keeping the curtains drawn, making sure no smoke rose from the chimney during the day when it might be spotted from a distance. Grushka stayed inside most of the time, only venturing out at night when the darkness could hide her. It was a difficult, isolated existence, and Lucas could see the toll it took on her. She grew restless and quiet, spending long hours staring out the window at the snow-covered landscape. He did his best to keep her spirits up, teaching her to play chess with a set he carved from wood, reading to her from his small collection of books, telling her stories of his travels before settling on the frontier. She, in turn, taught him songs from her childhood, recipes for orc dishes that he tried to recreate with varying success, and more of her language. The words felt strange in his mouth at first, all harsh consonants and guttural sounds, but he practiced until he could make himself understood. On the longest night of winter, the solstice, Grushka taught him an orc tradition. They stayed up all night feeding the fire, telling stories of the year past and hopes for the year to come. As dawn broke, painting the snow gold and pink, she sang a song in her language, her voice clear and strong. He did not understand all the words, but he understood the feeling behind them. Hope, renewal, survival. When she finished, she turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for giving me a reason to hope again." He reached out and wiped away her tears with his thumb, his hand lingering on her cheek. "You do not need to thank me. You are the one who brought hope into my life." They stayed like that for a long moment, looking at each other in the dawn light, and Lucas felt the thing between them shift and deepen. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted it so badly his whole body ached with it. But he did not, because he did not know if she wanted that, did not know if he had the right to ask for more than she had already given. Grushka solved the problem by leaning forward and pressing her lips to his, soft and tentative and perfect. He froze for a heartbeat, shocked, and then he was kissing her back, his hands sliding into her hair, her fingers gripping his shirt. It was not a practiced kiss or a smooth one. Their mouths did not quite fit together properly, her tusks getting in the way, but none of that mattered. What mattered was the warmth of her breath, the softness of her lips, the way she made a small sound of pleasure against his mouth. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Grushka smiled at him with a joy he had never seen on her face before. "I have wanted to do that for weeks." "Why did you not?" "Because I was afraid you did not feel the same, because I thought maybe you were just being kind, helping a stray." She touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "When did you know that I loved you?" The words came easily now, no longer frightening. "I think I started falling the first night, when you looked at me with those terrified eyes, and I realized I would rather die than see you hurt. But I knew for certain the day you fell asleep on my shoulder, and I could not imagine my life without you in it." "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have loved you since you gave me that first loaf of bread, since you showed me that kindness still existed in the world." They spent the rest of that day together in a way they never had before, stealing kisses between chores, holding hands as they sat by the fire, simply existing in the joy of not hiding their feelings anymore. When night fell again, Lucas built up the fire and pulled his bedroll close to Grushka's, and they fell asleep with their fingers intertwined, both smiling. The winter passed more quickly after that. The hardship of isolation and hiding became bearable because they had each other. They grew bolder in their affection, no longer afraid to touch, to kiss, to hold each other through the long, cold nights. Lucas gave up the pretense of separate beds and they slept curled together, sharing warmth and comfort. They did not make love, both feeling that such a step should wait until they had some kind of future together, but they found other ways to show their love. Gentle touches, whispered words, the simple intimacy of existing together. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it came with a violence that surprised them both. The snow melted rapidly, turning the roads to mud and the streams to torrents. Lucas's fields flooded, destroying the early crops he had planted. He spent days digging drainage ditches and trying to salvage what he could while Grushka helped as much as she was able, working beside him in the cold mud. It was on one of those days, as they stood in his ruined garden surveying the damage, that they heard horses approaching. Lucas grabbed Grushka's hand and pulled her toward the house, but it was too late. 3 riders came around the bend in the road, close enough to see them clearly. Human riders, armed and wearing the rough uniform of the frontier militia. The riders pulled up short, staring at Grushka with a mixture of shock and anger. The leader, a young man with a sword at his hip, pointed at her with a shaking hand. "That is an orc. You are harboring an orc." "She is not a threat," Lucas said quickly, putting himself between Grushka and the riders. "She is just a girl. She has been living here peacefully all winter." "Peacefully." The young man spat the word. "Orcs killed my brother in a raid last month, came down from the north and burned 3 farms. And you stand there telling me this creature is peaceful?" Lucas felt his stomach drop. "What raid? I have not heard anything, because you have been out here playing house with that thing instead of standing with your own kind." The rider's hand went to his sword. "Step aside." "We are taking her in." "No." Lucas did not move. "You are not touching her." "Lucas, please," Grushka said quietly behind him. "Do not do this. Do not throw your life away for me." "I am not throwing anything away. I am choosing you." He did not take his eyes off the riders. "She has not hurt anyone. She had nothing to do with any raid. She has been here with me the entire winter. And we are supposed to believe that. Supposed to believe that an orc is innocent." The young man drew his sword. "Last chance. Step aside or we go through you." Time seemed to slow. Lucas saw the sword come up, saw the determination in the rider's eyes, and knew with absolute certainty that they would kill Grushka if he moved. Without conscious thought, his hand went to his hip, but he had no weapon. He had left his sword in the house, never imagining he would need it in his own garden. What happened next surprised everyone. Grushka pushed past Lucas and stepped forward, her hands raised in surrender. "I will go with you. Just please do not hurt him. He has done nothing wrong except show me kindness." "Grushka." "No." Lucas grabbed for her, but she twisted away. "It is all right," she said, looking at him with those amber eyes he loved. "This was always going to happen. We both knew it. At least this way you will be safe." "I do not want to be safe without you." The words tore out of him, raw and desperate. "Please do not do this." The militia leader gestured, and the other two riders dismounted, moving to grab Grushka. She did not resist as they bound her hands roughly, but when they shoved her toward one of the horses, she stumbled and fell. Lucas lunged forward to help her, and the leader's sword came up, pressing against his chest. "Stay back unless you want to hang beside her." "What are you going to do with her?" Lucas demanded. "Take her to Fort Stillwater. They are holding all captured orcs there for trial." The young man's face was hard. "With raiders active in the area, they are not being merciful. She will probably hang within the week." Horror washed over Lucas. "No, you cannot. She is innocent. She has not done anything." "Tell that to my brother's widow." The riders mounted up, pulling Grushka roughly onto one of the horses. She looked at Lucas one last time, and he saw love and resignation in her face, saw her mouthing words he could not hear. Then they were riding away, taking her with them, and Lucas stood in his ruined garden watching the only person he had ever truly loved disappear down the muddy road. For a long moment, he simply stood there, numb with shock. Then fury rose in him, hot and sharp, burning away the numbness. They were going to kill her. They were going to hang her for crimes she had not committed, kill her for the sin of being born an orc. And he was supposed to just stand here and let it happen. No, not while he still drew breath. Lucas ran for the house, his mind racing. Fort Stillwater was 2 days' ride to the southeast. If the militia was taking prisoners there for trial, that meant there would be some semblance of legal process, which meant he had time. Not much time, but some. He grabbed his old army pack and started filling it with supplies. Food, water, his sword, the knife he had carried through 6 years of war. He changed into his sturdiest clothes and pulled on his worn traveling boots. As he worked, a plan began to form. He could not fight the entire fort, but he might not need to. He had served at Fort Stillwater years ago, knew its layout, knew some of the people who might still be stationed there. If he could get inside, if he could speak to the commander, maybe he could make them understand that Grushka was innocent. And if words did not work, then he would find another way. He would break her out if he had to, damn the consequences. He was strapping his pack closed when he heard more horses approaching. For a moment he feared the militia had come back, but when he looked outside he saw old Henrik riding up on his ancient mare, moving faster than Lucas had seen the old man move in years. Henrik dismounted and strode toward the house, his face grim. I just saw the militia heading east with an orc prisoner. Want to tell me what in the nine hells is going on?" Lucas met his eyes steadily. "That was Grushka. She has been living with me since last summer, and I am going to get her back. Are you out of your mind?" Henrik stared at him like he had grown a second head. "An orc? You have been hiding an orc here for months." "Yes, and I love her, and they are going to hang her for something she did not do. So I am going to Fort Stillwater, and I am going to get her back, and if you are here to try to stop me, then you are wasting your time." Henrik was silent for a long moment, studying Lucas with those sharp old eyes. Then, to Lucas's surprise, he smiled slightly. "I am not here to stop you, boy. I am here to help." "What? You think I did not know something was going on? I have lived on this frontier for 40 years. I know the signs of someone harboring a secret." Henrik limped into the house and poured himself some water from Lucas's bucket. "I figured it was a deserter or maybe someone running from the law. An orc, though, that takes it to a whole new level. If you knew, why did you not say anything?" "Because it was not my business. And because I have seen enough hate and killing to last me 3 lifetimes. If you found some kind of peace out here, who was I to ruin it?" He set down the cup. "But now they have taken her, and you are planning to do something stupid, and I cannot let you do it alone." Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. "You would help me, even though she is an orc." "I would help you because you are a good man who deserves a chance at happiness, and because that girl has been living peacefully here all winter while actual raiders were burning farms. That tells me she is not the enemy." Henrik moved to the door, looking out at the road. "Besides, I always hated Fort Stillwater. The commander there is a pompous ass who needs taking down a peg. What do you suggest? You go after her, but you do it smart. Not a rescue, not at first. You go there as a witness. Tell them she has been here with you, that she could not possibly have been involved in any raids. Vouch for her character. Make them see her as a person instead of just an orc." Henrik turned back to Lucas. "If that does not work, then we figure out a way to break her out, but we try words first." It was sound advice, and Lucas knew it. He forced himself to breathe, to think instead of just reacting. "Will you come with me? Your word would carry more weight than mine." "I figured I would. Someone needs to keep you from doing something heroically stupid." Henrik smiled, but there was steel in his eyes. "We leave at first light. Get some rest. You are going to need it." That night was the longest of Lucas's life. He tried to sleep but kept seeing Grushka's face as the militia dragged her away, kept hearing her voice telling him to let her go. He finally gave up on sleep around midnight and spent the dark hours sharpening his sword and checking his supplies, preparing for whatever was to come. Dawn found him and Henrik on the road, riding hard toward Fort Stillwater. Henrik had brought his own horse and provisions, and he set a brutal pace that ate up the miles. They rode through the day with few breaks, stopping only to rest the horses and eat cold rations. By sunset, they had covered nearly 40 miles and were still pushing on. "Tell me about her," Henrik said as they rode through the gathering darkness. "This orc girl of yours." Lucas found himself talking, the words spilling out as he described Grushka, how they had met, how she had been cast out by her clan for wanting peace, how she had survived alone in the forest. He told Henrik about the winter they had spent together, about teaching her to read and learning her language, about the way she sang and the sound of her laugh. He told him about falling in love, about realizing that everything he had been taught about orcs was wrong. Henrik listened in silence, and when Lucas finally ran out of words, the old man nodded slowly. "You really love her, more than anything. Then we will get her back. I give you my word." They reached Fort Stillwater late the next day, exhausted and filthy from hard riding. The fort was smaller than Lucas remembered, just a wooden palisade surrounding a handful of buildings, but it bristled with activity. Soldiers moved along the walls, and he could see militia members camped outside the gates. The recent raids had clearly put everyone on edge. Henrik took the lead as they approached the gate, using his age and frontier status to get them through without too many questions. Inside, the situation was even more tense. Lucas counted at least 50 soldiers and twice that many militia, all armed and looking eager for a fight. In the center of the compound, he saw a holding area that had been built since his time here. Heavy wooden cages, like those used for dangerous animals, and in one of those cages, huddled in the corner with her hands still bound, was Grushka. Lucas started toward her, but Henrik caught his arm. "Not yet. We go to the commander first. We do this by the rules, or we do not do it at all." They found Commander Marsh in his office, a heavy man in his 50s with the kind of face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He looked up from his paperwork with obvious annoyance when they entered. "Henrik, what brings you here? Come to speak about the orc prisoner you brought in yesterday." Henrik settled into a chair without being invited and gestured for Lucas to do the same. "This is Lucas Thorne. He has information you need to hear." Marsh's eyes narrowed as they fixed on Lucas. "What kind of information?" Lucas sat forward, choosing his words carefully. "The orc girl you are holding, Grushka, she has been living on my land since last summer. She has been there the entire winter. She could not possibly have been involved in the raids to the north. You are harboring an orc." Marsh's voice went dangerously quiet. "You are admitting to that." "I am admitting to giving shelter to someone who needed it. She was starving, cast out by her clan. She has not hurt anyone. She has been living peacefully, working my land, causing no trouble. The law is very clear about harboring orcs during wartime. You could hang for this." "Then I hang, but you cannot punish her for crimes she did not commit. She is innocent." Marsh stood, his face flushing red. "Innocent? There is no such thing as an innocent orc. They are all the same, all savages who would kill us all given half a chance. The fact that you would shelter one, that you would sleep under the same roof as one, tells me you are either a traitor or a fool." "I am neither. I am someone who has looked past the surface and seen the person underneath." Lucas stood as well, meeting Marsh's anger with his own. "Grushka wanted peace. That is why her clan cast her out. She spoke against raiding human settlements. She wanted to find another way. And for that, her own people rejected her, and now you want to hang her. Where is the justice in that?" "Justice?" Marsh slammed his hand on the desk. "You want to talk about justice? 3 farms burned, 8 people dead, including children, a dozen more wounded. That is what your peaceful orc friends have done. And you expect me to believe that this one is different? She is different. I know it because I have lived with her for months. I have seen her kindness, her intelligence, her compassion. She is not a monster. She is a person who made the mistake of being born on the wrong side of a war she never wanted to fight." "Touching." Marsh's voice dripped with sarcasm. "But irrelevant. She will hang the day after tomorrow along with the other prisoners we have taken. And if you do not get out of my office right now, you will join her." Henrik stood, putting a restraining hand on Lucas's shoulder before he could say something that would get them both arrested. "We are leaving. But you are making a mistake, Marsh. That girl is innocent, and executing her will not bring back the people who died. It will just create more hate, more violence, more death. Get out." They left the office, Lucas vibrating with fury and helplessness. Henrik steered him quickly away from the command building, out toward where the horses were stabled. Once they were far enough away that no one would overhear, the old man turned to him. "That went about as well as I expected. He is going to kill her." Lucas could barely force the words out. "He is going to hang her in 2 days, and there is nothing I can do to stop it." "I did not say that. I said it went as expected. Marsh is exactly the kind of blind fool I thought he would be, but that does not mean we are out of options. Henrik glanced around, making sure they were alone. Tonight, once it is full dark, we are going to get her out of here. Break her out. Henrik, they will kill us. Not if we do it smart. I know this fort, fought from it 20 years ago. There are ways in and out that most people do not remember. He smiled grimly. I am too old to watch an innocent person hang. So we are getting her out, and then the three of you are going to disappear into the wilderness until this whole mess blows over. You would do that? Risk yourself like that? Boy, I am 73 years old. I have lived longer than I ever expected to. If I am going to die, it might as well be doing something worthwhile. He clapped Lucas on the shoulder. Now stop looking like someone kicked your dog and help me plan this out. They spent the rest of the day preparing, quietly gathering supplies and weapons, studying the guard patterns, looking for weaknesses in the fort's defenses. Henrik proved to be surprisingly sharp for his age, noticing details that Lucas missed, thinking 3 steps ahead. By the time full darkness fell, they had a plan. It was risky and probably insane, but it was better than doing nothing. Lucas approached the holding cages around midnight, moving slowly through the shadows. The guard was a young man, barely 20, fighting to stay awake in the cold night air. Lucas waited until his head nodded forward, then moved quickly and silently behind him. He hated what he had to do next, but he saw no other choice. He slipped an arm around the guard's throat, cutting off his air until the young man slumped unconscious. He would have a headache when he woke, but nothing worse. He found the keys on the guard's belt and moved to Grushka's cage. She was awake, huddled in the corner, and her eyes went wide when she saw him. Lucas, what are you doing here, getting you out? He fumbled with the keys, trying to find the right one. We do not have much time. You cannot do this. They will kill you for helping me. Then they kill me. I am not leaving you here. The lock finally clicked open and he pulled the door wide. Can you walk? Are you hurt? I am fine. Lucas, please, you have to listen. No. You are going to come with me, and we are going to get out of here, and we are going to figure the rest out later. He cut the ropes binding her hands and helped her out of the cage. Henrik is waiting with horses outside the west wall. There is an old drainage tunnel that comes out near the stables. We go through there, get to the horses, and ride hard into the forest. Henrik is helping. She stared at him in disbelief. Your neighbor. Turns out the old man is better than I gave him credit for. Now come on, before someone notices the guard is down. They moved quickly through the darkness, following the route Henrik had mapped out. The drainage tunnel was where the old man said it would be, a narrow stone passage that reeked of waste but provided a way under the wall. They crawled through on their bellies, emerging on the other side filthy and gasping. Henrik was there with 3 horses, already saddled and ready. Took you long enough. Had to be careful. Lucas helped Grushka onto one of the horses and mounted his own. Ready, as I will ever be. Let us get out of here before they realize she is gone. They rode hard into the forest, putting as much distance between themselves and the fort as possible. Behind them, Lucas heard shouts as the alarm was raised, heard the sounds of soldiers scrambling to respond. But by then, they were already deep among the trees, following game trails that would hide their tracks, moving by moonlight through country Lucas had hunted in during his army days. They rode through the night and into the next day, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. Henrik set a punishing pace, leading them deeper into wilderness that few humans ever traveled. By sunset of the second day, they were far beyond the reach of any pursuit, exhausted and sore but safe. They made camp in a small clearing beside a stream, and Lucas finally allowed himself to believe they had made it. He looked at Grushka, at her green skin and her amber eyes and her small tusks, and felt such a surge of love and relief that he could barely breathe. "I thought I had lost you," he said quietly. She crossed to him and pulled him into a fierce embrace. "You came for me. You risked everything to come for me." "Of course I did. I love you. I would do anything for you." "I love you too, so much it terrifies me." Henrik cleared his throat awkwardly. "Hate to interrupt the tender moment, but we need to talk about what happens next. That stunt we just pulled means neither of you can go back to Lucas's farm. The army will be watching it, waiting for you to return. You are both fugitives now." The reality of that hit Lucas like cold water. He had been so focused on rescuing Grushka that he had not really thought about the consequences. His home was gone. His life on the frontier was over. He was a wanted man now, and he might never be able to return to human settlements. "Where do we go?" he asked. "Deeper into the wilderness, at least for now, out past the edge of the frontier where neither humans nor orc clans go." Henrik poked at the fire with a stick. "I know a place, an old trapper's cabin about 3 days north of here. It is rough, but it will give you shelter while you figure out your next move. You have thought this through." "Someone had to." Henrik smiled slightly. "I will go back eventually, tell them a story about being forced to help you at sword point. They will probably believe it. But you two need to disappear for a while. Maybe a year, maybe longer. Let things cool down." Grushka spoke for the first time since they had made camp. "Why are you doing this? You are risking so much for people you barely know." "Because I have lived a long time and seen a lot of hate accomplish nothing but more hate. Because that boy there is one of the good ones and you seem to make him happy. Because maybe, if enough people start seeing past their differences, we can actually have peace someday." Henrik looked at her directly. "And because you remind me of my wife, the way you look at him. She was fierce and kind and brave, and she loved me even though everyone said she should not. So yes, I am helping, and I do not regret it." They stayed with Henrik for 3 more days as he guided them to the cabin he had mentioned. It was indeed rough, barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but it was shelter, and it was hidden deep in the forest where no one would find them. Henrik left them with supplies and instructions on how to survive in the deep wilderness, promising to check on them when he could. "You two take care of each other," he said as he prepared to leave, "and do not do anything stupid." "Too late for that," Lucas replied with a faint smile. "But we will try." They watched the old man ride away, and then they were alone again. Truly alone in a way they had not been since the summer when Grushka first came into Lucas's life. They spent the first few days making the cabin livable, patching the roof and the walls, building a proper fireplace, setting snares for game. It was hard work, but they were together, and that made everything bearable. As the days turned to weeks, and then months, they built a life in that deep forest. Lucas taught Grushka more about survival skills, about tracking and hunting and reading the signs of the forest. She taught him more of her culture, more of her language, shared stories and songs that her mother had taught her. They planted a small garden in the clearing around the cabin, hunted deer and rabbits, fished in the nearby stream. It was a simple life, isolated and sometimes lonely, but it was theirs. Summer turned to autumn and autumn to winter. Snow fell thick in the deep forest, and they spent long, dark months huddled by the fire, talking and reading and simply being together. They made love for the first time during those winter months, a slow and tender joining that felt like the most natural thing in the world. Afterward, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms under piles of furs, Grushka cried. And when Lucas asked her why, she said it was because she had never imagined she could be this happy. Winter gave way to spring, and with the spring came Henrik. He rode up to the cabin on a warm day in early April, looking older and more tired than Lucas remembered. But he was smiling, and he carried news. "Things have changed," he told them over a meal of roasted rabbit and wild onions. "The raid stopped about 2 months after you disappeared." Turned out it was a rogue clan, barely 20 orcs, and they were killed in a fight with another orc group that thought they were causing too much trouble. Word spread that they were acting alone, not part of any larger war. "So the humans and orcs are not fighting anymore?" Lucas asked. "Not openly. There is still tension, still distrust, but the killing has stopped for now. Some people are even talking about trying to establish trade agreements, neutral ground where both sides can meet." Henrik looked at Grushka. "Your name came up in some of those talks." "There are orcs who remember that you spoke for peace, who think you might be able to help bridge the gap." Grushka's eyes widened. "My clan would never take me back. Not your old clan, maybe, but there are others who think differently. Progressive types, I guess you would call them. They have been looking for you." Hope and fear warred on her face. Lucas reached out and took her hand, squeezing gently. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that maybe I do not have to hide anymore, that maybe there is a place for someone like me in this world." She looked at him. "For someone like us," Henrik nodded. "There is talk of establishing a settlement on neutral ground, a place where humans and orcs who want peace can live together, try to build something new. It is a crazy idea, probably doomed to fail, but some people are willing to try." He looked between them. "They would welcome you both if you wanted to come." Lucas felt his heart beating hard. A chance to stop hiding, to stop running. A chance to build something real with Grushka, not just survival but an actual life. It seemed too good to be true. "What about the charges against me?" he asked. "I am still a fugitive. Been taken care of. I talked to some people, called in some favors. Your service record helped. They agreed to drop the charges if you agreed to act as a liaison between the humans and orcs at this new settlement." Henrik smiled. "Seems your unique perspective might be valuable after all." Grushka looked at Lucas, her amber eyes searching his face. "What do you want to do?" "I want whatever you want. If you want to stay here, hidden and safe, we stay. If you want to go to this settlement and try to build something, we go. I am with you no matter what." She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she nodded slowly. "I think I am tired of hiding. I think I want to try to build something better for us and for everyone who comes after us." "Then we go," Lucas said, and felt something settle in his chest. Hope, he realized. Real hope for the first time in a long time. They left the cabin a week later, following Henrik north and east to where the new settlement was being built. It was located in a broad valley between human and orc territories, with a river running through the center and forests on all sides. Already there were a dozen structures going up. Simple buildings but well made, and people moving everywhere. Humans and orcs, working side by side, building something that had never existed before. They were welcomed carefully, with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, but welcomed nonetheless. Lucas found himself called upon to help with planning and construction, his army experience and frontier knowledge proving valuable. Grushka was approached by a delegation of young orcs, both male and female, who had heard of her and wanted to learn about her ideas for peace. She spoke with them for hours, sharing her story and listening to theirs, and Lucas watched her come alive in a way he had never seen before. Months passed, and the settlement grew. It was not easy. There were tensions and arguments, old hatreds that flared up without warning. But there was also progress. Humans and orcs learning to communicate, to trade, to work together. Children from both races playing together, seeing each other as friends rather than enemies. It was slow and fragile and imperfect, but it was something. Lucas and Grushka built a house on the edge of the settlement, a proper house with 2 rooms and a real floor and windows with glass. They planted a garden and got a few chickens and a goat. They made friends, both human and orc, and hosted dinners where everyone crowded around their table and shared food and stories. They were happy in a way that Lucas had never thought possible, building a life that was richer and fuller than anything he had imagined. One evening in late autumn, as they sat on the porch of their house watching the sun set over the valley, Grushka turned to him with a serious expression. "I want to marry you," she said. Lucas blinked, surprised. "What?" "I want to marry you, by human custom and orc custom both. I want everyone to know that we are bound together, that we choose each other." She took his hand. "Will you marry me, Lucas Thorne?" He laughed, joy bubbling up inside him. "Yes, yes, of course I will marry you. I should have asked you months ago. I do not care who asked. I only care about your answer." She smiled at him, her tusks catching the golden light. Whenever you want. Tomorrow if you like. Tomorrow is too soon. I want time to do it properly, but soon." She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "I want the whole world to know that I love you." They married a month later, in a ceremony that blended human and orc traditions in ways that had never been done before. Grushka wore a dress of green and white, colors sacred to her people, while Lucas wore a formal tunic that Henrik had somehow managed to acquire. The ceremony was performed by both a human priest and an orc shaman, and nearly the entire settlement turned out to witness it. When they spoke their vows, Lucas looked into Grushka's eyes and saw his whole future reflected there. He promised to love her, to protect her, to stand beside her through whatever trials came. She promised the same, her voice strong and clear, and when they kissed to seal their union, the crowd cheered, humans and orcs together. The celebration lasted long into the night, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat. Lucas danced with his wife, holding her close, and felt a contentment so deep it bordered on disbelief. This was his life now. This woman was his wife. This community was his home. All because one night he had chosen kindness over fear, compassion over hatred. As the celebration wound down and people began heading to their homes, Henrik approached them, leaning heavily on a cane he had not needed a few months earlier. The old man was failing, Lucas knew, his age finally catching up with him. But his eyes were bright as he looked at them. "You two did good," he said simply. "Better than good. You proved that it is possible that humans and orcs can not only coexist but love each other. You gave people hope." "We could not have done it without you," Lucas said. "You saved us both." "Nah, I just helped you save each other." Henrik smiled. "That is what matters, saving each other, building something together. That is how we make the world better, one person at a time." He hugged them both, then shuffled off into the night, leaving Lucas and Grushka standing together under the stars. They walked home slowly, neither wanting the day to end, and when they finally reached their house, they stood for a moment on the porch, looking back at the settlement. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Grushka asked softly. "If you had not given me that bread that first night, if you had turned me away." "All the time," Lucas admitted. "I think about how empty my life was before you, how lonely, how much I was just going through the motions without really living." He turned to face her, taking both her hands. "You saved me, Grushka, just as much as I saved you. We saved each other," she said, echoing Henrik's words. "And now we get to build a life together. A real life, not hiding or running, but living openly and honestly." They went inside and closed the door on the night, on the past, on everything that had come before. In the morning, they would wake to their new life together, would face whatever challenges came with the strength that came from loving someone completely. But for now, they simply held each other, grateful for every choice that had led them to this moment, grateful for a love that had grown from a single act of kindness into something that would last the rest of their lives. Years later, when people asked Lucas about how he met his wife, he always told them the same story. He had caught an orc girl stealing bread from his pantry, and he had handed her the whole loaf instead. That one small choice, that moment of compassion, had changed everything. It had given him love, purpose, and a family. It had helped build a community where peace was possible. It had proven that kindness could triumph over hatred, that love could bridge any divide. And every time he told the story, he would look at Grushka, at the woman who had become his wife and his partner and his best friend. And he would remember that cold night when she had stood terrified in his pantry, clutching stale bread to her chest. He would remember the choice he had made to help her instead of hurt her, and he would be grateful all over again that he had chosen compassion, because that choice had given him everything.